in fact, on the two different evaluations, the Holy Spirit's evaluation of you, which is God's evaluation, as well as the ego's evaluation of you. Hello and welcome to Miracles on High Plains. My name is Jonica, and our reader today is David S.
God's will is your salvation. Would he not have given you the means to find it? If he wills you to have it, he must have made it possible and easy to obtain it. Your brothers are everywhere. You do not have to seek far for salvation. Every minute and every second gives you a chance to save yourself. Do not lose these chances, not because they will not return, but because delay of joy is needless. God wills you perfect happiness now. Is it possible that this is not also your will? And is it possible that this is not also the will of your brothers? Consider then that in this joint will you are all united, and in this only.
So it starts out with the theme of salvation as defined by the Holy Spirit. Salvation would be your happiness, your remembering of the truth of who you are and experiencing inner peace. And the Course says that these are gifts from heaven to us. We all have them, although they are often hidden or buried deep within our unconscious mind. And this Course is intended to remove those barriers so that they become part of your awareness. And one of the beauties of this gift is that you find them in relationships with others. And so he says that your brothers are everywhere, that your awareness of your salvation is possible and easy to obtain. It's everywhere. You don't even have to seek far for it. In fact, from the holy perspective, every minute and every second gives you a chance to remember, to recognize once again the truth of your part in God's plan for salvation. Now, we don't always take advantage of those minutes and opportunities. Well, we often lose these chances, but they are still there. The opportunity remains, but the penalty we pay is a delay of joy, a needless loss of opportunities for joy and perfect happiness. And so this Course is about accelerating your return to happiness and to joy. And so the theme that, the couple themes that run through this section today, we already said that you can find salvation in relationships with your brothers. Think of it in terms of a shared will, the will of your brothers. And it says this joint in the joint will, a shared will, a will to claim your part in God's plan. In that, we are all united. We all share a common purpose. And in that alone.
Consider then that in this joint will you are all united, and in this only. There may be disagreement on anything else, but not on this. This then is where peace abides. And you abide in peace when you so decide. Yet you cannot abide in peace unless you accept the atonement, because the atonement is the way to peace. The reason is very simple and so obvious that it is often overlooked. The ego is afraid of the obvious, since obviousness is the essential characteristic of reality. Yet you cannot overlook it unless you are not looking. It is perfectly obvious that if the Holy Spirit looks with love on all he perceives, he looks with love on you.
So the goal of this program is clearly stated as helping you to find inner peace. There can be no doubt about that. And so, assuming that you adopt that as your goal, that you want to find inner peace, this is the right program for that. And I find that when you're seeking for something, it really helps to know where to look. And so and peace is not hidden. And so where does peace abide? Peace abides in the joint will of the sonship in which we are all united. Said another way, peace can only be found where relationships are peaceful, share a common purpose, a harmony. Where conflict abides, that interferes with our experience of peace. So this is rather obvious. And what do we need to know about that plan of peace? We need to know that you cannot abide in peace until first you fully accept into your awareness the plan of atonement, because the plan of atonement is the way to peace. And so these are characteristics that are so simple to understand. Where do you find peace? And what is the prerequisite? That's my term for it. The prerequisite, of course, this term would be the condition for experiencing peace is to accept the plan of atonement for yourself. And these things, which are so obvious and simple, the ego is afraid to look at the obvious. It's afraid to look at reality. It would have you look instead into dark dreams and illusions in an attempt to find guidance and answers. So with that, we'll go on.
It is perfectly obvious that if the Holy Spirit looks with love on all he perceives, he looks with love on you. His evaluation of you is based on his knowledge of what you are. And so he evaluates you truly. And this evaluation must be in your mind because he is. The ego is also in your mind because you have accepted it there. Its evaluation of you, however, is the exact opposite of the Holy Spirit's, because the ego does not love you. It is unaware of what you are and wholly mistrustful of everything it perceives because its perceptions are so shifting. The ego is therefore capable of suspiciousness at best and viciousness at worst. That is its range. It cannot exceed it because of its uncertainty, and it can never go beyond it because it can never be certain.
Mm-hmm. So this section is entitled The Two Evaluations, and it introduces those two evaluations here, which are exactly opposite the Holy Spirit's evaluation and the ego's. So we need to recognize what the ego's evaluation of you is, what it consists of, and so that you see it plainly for what it is, that you can choose of your own free will to let go of it, that it's not for your good at all. So the ego's evaluation is the exact opposite of the Holy Spirit's. And in this paragraph here, if you're taking notes, I think this is one of the most crucial notes about the nature of the ego that I know of. The ego has an emotional range of performance that is based on being wholly mistrustful of everything it perceives. So, mistrust of everything. And emotionally, that is characterized by a range that goes from suspicious when it's relaxed, so to speak, it's suspicious, and when it's aroused, it becomes vicious. Suspicious to vicious is the note. That is the range of the ego. It's embedded in fear and mistrust, and it can move rapidly from suspiciousness to viciousness. It can be triggered, if you will, and it cannot exceed that range. One more thing that should be said here that might clear up some misunderstanding of what is sometimes taught in our world. The ego does not love you, and the ego does not love you, and therefore your efforts to quote, if you go to a workshop, I'm not going to make specific reference, but you'll get a sense. If you go to a workshop on trying to love yourself, that is often implied that you love the self that you made, or the ego self. It's often implied that that means to love your ego. Well, that is a futile effort because the ego does not love you. It is not a loving relationship. We just said its entire range of performance is from suspicion to viciousness. So any effort to try to love your ego self is poorly directed effort. David W., you had your hand up.
Comment, Jonica. That was such an accurate summary for me of what the ego is. I've never been happier in my life following this course, doing the lessons, doing everything. But I'm happy as I am. If I start to dwell in the ego thoughts about the world and other things, what the ego can do within about 30 minutes for me, it can take me to thoughts of suicide. The happiest I've ever been, but if I give it that attention, that's where it'll drag me. So I was laughing with that line is so great. He's not your friend. He wants to kill me. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So you said 30 minutes. We will find out. The ego can do it in less than a minute. Go into its extreme. Anytime we get triggered and our fears get aroused, we know that biochemically the adrenaline releases into every cell in our body in less than 1 second. The body is so efficient in the fight or flight syndrome. So that process works very fast. And that would be a part of this movement from suspicious to viciousness. So we will come back to that. We will often cite the ego, suspicion to viciousness, as a characteristic of its nature.
You then have two conflicting evaluations of yourself in your mind, and they cannot both be true. You do not yet realize how completely different these evaluations are because you do not understand how lofty the Holy Spirit's perception of you really is. He is not deceived by anything you do because he never forgets what you are. The ego is deceived by everything you do, especially when you respond to the Holy Spirit, because at such times its confusion increases. The ego is therefore particularly likely to attack you when you react lovingly, because it has evaluated you as unloving, and you are going against its judgment. The ego will attack your motives as soon as they become clearly out of accord with its perception of you. This is when it will shift abruptly from suspiciousness to viciousness, since its uncertainty is increased. Yet it is surely pointless to attack in return. What can this mean except that you are agreeing with the ego's evaluation of what you are?
So the opposite of inner peace is inner conflict. And where it's configured for inner conflict because there are these two evaluations of yourself in your own mind. They're not both, and they are exact opposite in nature. But we don't fully, most people are not aware of this inner conflict, the source of it being one. You might have seen the image where there's an angel on one shoulder and a little devil on the other. It kind of symbolizes that there's two different voices whispering to your mind at the same time from exactly different points of view. And so this is ego seeks to undermine the Holy Spirit's love for you. And if it wasn't already clear, let's make sure that we are clear. Whenever you react lovingly towards in any situation, the ego gets upset. It has evaluated you as not loving. It sees you as a part of itself. And when you go against the ego's judgment, you, so to speak, are offending or triggering the ego. And that is all that's needed for it to become aroused and shift abruptly from suspiciousness to viciousness. So what is the cause of that? The cause is when you react lovingly towards something or someone, then the ego becomes upset. This has been unofficially labeled as ego backlash. And you might witness it in yourself where, well, David spoke about it indirectly a moment ago. He said, oh man, I'm having this great day. I'm feeling on top of the world. And then shortly after that, I find myself torn into an ego storm. Well, and people have called that, it's not in the course, ego backlash is the term to give it. I think it's a good term. And the trigger for it, oddly enough, is when your higher self steps forward in a loving manner. So this sometimes happens to me where I might have an encounter with someone and it goes really well and it's like all good feelings prevail. And then afterwards, when I'm by myself, I start to reevaluate it and I wind up with a critical view of what just happened. Some thoughts come to me that lead me to lose confidence in what just happened. This is a part of backlash because you are going against the ego's judgment of you. So, one of the things that I've come to see is you can expect the ego to react this way. For in other words, this is predictable. If you're loving towards it, it will later suggest or try to guide you into a set of thoughts and feelings which are dark and cold and unloving. And what can this mean? Except that the ego is beckoning you to agree with its evaluation of you. That's a trap. It takes mind training to, first of all, realize the ego does these things, but more importantly, to when we are baited by the ego in that manner, it takes a trained mind to realize, oh, that's ego backlash. I knew it was coming. I'm not going to invest my faith and belief in that dark story.
If you choose to see yourself as unloving, you will not be happy. You are condemning yourself and must therefore regard yourself as inadequate. Would you look to the ego to help you escape from a sense of inadequacy it has produced and must maintain for its existence? Can you escape from its evaluation of you by using its methods for keeping this picture intact?
I'm sorry, Jerry, I saw your hand up. I thought I saw your hand up. I didn't know if you had a comment. Can you unmute? If you do, go ahead and unmute yourself. Well, I'm sorry. You have to do it again. I pressed the wrong button. My bad. There you go.
Perhaps no simplification is when you think you're your own worst enemy.
Yeah.
It's really an oversimplification, but that's what came to my mind.
Yes. 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 Which is an example of inner conflict. Nobody wants or would welcome being their own worst enemy, but we do it anyway.
Yeah.
And so that produces this conflict within, which then makes it blocks our ability to be effective in relatiship.
Yeah.
Because if you can't get along with yourself, you're your own worst enemy.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't share peace and kindness outwardly.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. Okay, so let's really get to the psychological component of what we're talking about. We're talking about loving your higher self or your true self, not loving your ego attempt to define yourself, but your true self. If you choose to see yourself as unloving, you cannot find happiness and view yourself as unloving because the finger of condemnation will point towards yourself. What Jerry just said as being your own worst enemy, you condemn yourself and regard yourself as inadequate. I find this expression summarizes it really well as feeling inadequate to the task, whatever you're facing, a relationship issue, life itself, feeling not adequate for meeting those moments. And so this is what the ego wants to drag us into, that dark cloud of inadequacy. And this is where mind training comes in, to help you escape from a sense of inadequacy. And so the part that really requires you to learn anew is to not entertain the images and the stories associated with the ego's condemnation of you. So in the example I gave, where I had a good encounter and then later on I was reflecting on it and I started feeling a different point of view, that's where the error is made. You're reflecting on the dark side, the negative side, the ego's evaluation. And so we need to learn to put up, guard our minds, to put up a barrier and say no, so that we escape from the ego's evaluation of you. You can't stare at the ego's image of you and be free. You, by definition, if you stare at it, you give it your faith and your attention, your faith and belief, and pretty soon you've made it real in your own mind. Noel?
For me, the immediacy of recognizing the immediacy of the negative thought or judgment is the key. And I mean, I always know. So, but sometimes I ignore it or sometimes I yield to it.
Yes.
But it's really the immediate awareness, admission, and then recognizing as always that I can choose again.
Yes. Yes, so true. Thank you, Noel, for stressing that. The Course says again and again, when tempted, quickly turn to the Holy Spirit. Don't spend 30 minutes dwelling on ego nonsense and then decide that you've made yourself miserable and you don't want to be that way anymore. Do so from the beginning, immediately. David W.?
Thank you, Jonica. Wow. I really love the emphasis you put on its dark cloud of inadequacy. In the ACA program that I've been in for decades, when they talk about the critical parent, old messages that keep running through your head. And what I found in watching my thinking is those messages are still there. The ones I received as a kid, and they're kind of on an autoplay. And so if I'm not aware, they're just going to kick in. I've noticed it when I'm doing tasks outside. I doubt myself and I turn to the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit says, whoa, you know exactly what you're doing. Take your time. I'm here to help you. But I find that inadequacy is, and I think the hard part of it for me is the ironic, I'm shifting gears here, but the ironic thing is the ego is attacking me. It wants me dead. I mean, it's frightening. Anyway, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's summarize what we saw is the ego is fundamentally mistrustful. It has a range of performance that is limited to suspiciousness all the way to viciousness. And it does so by making you feel inadequate, by condemning you and making you feel inadequate.
You cannot evaluate an insane belief system from within it. Its range precludes this. You can only go beyond it, look back from a point where sanity exists, and see the contrast. Only by this contrast can insanity be judged as insane. With the grandeur of God in you, you have chosen to be little and to lament your littleness. Within the system that dictated this choice, the lament is inevitable. Your littleness is taken for granted there, and you do not ask, who granted it? The question is meaningless within the ego's thought system because it would open the whole thought system to question.
Mhm. So I'm a big fan of what he's trying to explain here, but I also understand that for many people, upon reading it for the first time, it doesn't have make a lot of sense to you. So I want to try to illustrate this with a word picture. Picture two situations. One, there's a dark cloud, and you enter into that dark cloud and start to look for answers within a dark cloud, of which all, and what it says here is within this system, the lament is inevitable. If you enter into a dark cloud, you will lament your littleness. You will feel inadequate. It's inevitable. That's what people go into dark clouds to do, to lament their littleness. Okay, so that's one cloud. There's another cloud, though, and we'll call that a bright silvery cloud with a golden, covered by a golden light. The only way you can properly evaluate the ego's insanity, its dark cloud, is to emerge from the dark cloud and stand in the light. And from that position, within the light of the Holy Spirit, you can look at what the ego offers and see that is insane. I could never expect to find anything worthwhile in that cloud of condemnation, littleness, and inadequacy. I really don't want that for myself. That's the choice that we all have to make. I don't want to invest in ego inadequacy, ego littleness. So, but what the Course tells us is that you can't come to that conclusion while you're in the center of the dark cloud. You can't voluntarily stare into this darkness of the ego and reason through what's going on, because within that system that is dictated to you, you will think of it as being accurate, logical. Let me say that another way. When you're standing in a dark cloud, darkness makes perfect sense. Hopelessness and despair are seemingly the only choice available from within a dark cloud. It's only when you step out of that into the light that you realize darkness is not necessary and that was a result of poor choosing. So now let's make sense of what we just said. These are two different evaluations of yourself. One, you look for yourself within a dark cloud. The other, you look at yourself within a cloud of golden light. It's a choice. And it's a choice that we read in the first paragraph. Every minute and every second, this is available to you. And as you see yourself, so will you also see others. And so it'll affect all your relationships as well. David, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'll just share a little bit about what's going on with me lately. And then this reading today is helping me to see it, the two evaluations. So People know, some of you guys know my house and stuff like that. And I have a beautiful home that I live in, and I chose this week to sell my house and bought another house. And it's really challenging me, my serenity, the whole process. And I'll be asleep, and 2:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm woken up with thoughts of fear, with thoughts of what am I doing? What have I done? Why have I done this to myself? You know, my ego is attacking me. And I got a thing and two things have gone today that are remarkable. One is that everything that happens is a lesson God would have me learn, which is the lesson for today if you're doing it one day at a time. And I got a text early this morning, that says, the right doors won't open for you until you are the version of yourself that's supposed to walk through them.
Say it again. That's so beautiful.
The right doors won't open for you until you are the version of yourself that's supposed to walk through them. So powerful, so pure, in the sense that God will not have the door open, would not have me buying this house if I wasn't supposed to. And we've been looking at it for 5 months and kept saying, Susie and I, well, if it's meant to be, it'll happen. And if it's not meant to be, it won't happen. If it's God's will, you know, and a lot of people who are not like involved with things like the course and stuff will say, oh, how stupid can you be if it's God's will? You've got to press forward with your own will and make it happen and do something. And there's no peace in that. There's no peace in making it happen. And these two messages of today have really, really offered me some peace. And also the reading that we're doing is so right on for the same thing. Is that I have to remember that David doesn't make choices that are healthy. David questions whatever's going on. David questions the Holy Spirit. But that spirit within me is aligned and allows things to go forward in peace. My work is to let go of David's ego and align with what's going on. And it talks about, if I forgive this, everything is fine. I will see it differently. So anyway, becoming right-minded about things is the only way I can find peace.
Very powerful. Thank you for sharing that, my brother. Jerry, you had your hand up. Let me see if we can get you unmuted here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is really a powerful day for me with this lesson, because I've been having unpleasant thoughts about the disease I have and what I'm able to do and not do. And I'm not sure how the littleness part fits in, but it's causing me to have those thoughts about maybe I don't want to go on. And I'm really not sure where the heck that's coming from. Because like we talked before we started this session today, I have plans about going here, there, and everywhere. But I can't do it because of certain limitations. But so I'm really conflicted in two different ways, really. And I'm kind of working through that, but I'm not working through it very well or very, very quickly. But today is really a very eye-opening look into me.
Yes. Yes, it is. And for us all, when you're sharing there, Jerry, there's a little bit of you're speaking for every one of us in different forms. We're all going through these inner conflicts. Which voice do I listen to? Which one should I be siding with? And this is where mind training comes in. David mentions a case where he wakes up out of a deep sleep and all of a sudden the thoughts are there. Like we're very vulnerable in that moment. And so this is where a lot of attention towards what is the content of my thinking right now, and is this something that I choose to entertain? It's a deep learning because we're going to find out you can't, like you mentioned earlier, Jerry, about being your own worst enemy. Well, many times our thoughts and feelings are our own worst enemy.
Yeah.
And we want to learn not to follow after them. Thank you all for sharing. We'll go on.
I have said that the ego does not know what a real question is. Lack of knowledge of any kind is always associated with unwillingness to know. And this produces a total lack of knowledge simply because knowledge is total. Not to question your littleness, therefore, is to deny all knowledge and keep the ego's whole thought system intact. You cannot retain part of a thought system because it can be questioned only at its foundation. And this must be questioned from beyond it, because within it, its foundation does stand. The Holy Spirit judges against the reality of the ego's thought system merely because he knows its foundation is not true. Therefore, nothing that arises from it means anything. He judges every belief you hold in terms of where it comes from. If it comes from God, he knows it to be true. If it does not, he knows that it is meaningless.
So there's a clue here. Both David's sharing and Jerry's both speak to situations which are common to us all. These two voices within two different evaluations. And the method that the Course teaches is to question those. Jerry, we label it as littleness. Little thoughts bring us down, pound us into, hammer us into despair and hopelessness, whereas uplifting, life-giving thoughts lift us up and enliven us, give us hope. So we refer to that, the dark thoughts, as littleness. So the Course says that we have to, rather than debate with these thoughts of inadequacy. I'm thinking of David waking up at 3 a.m. and his mind is telling him, what am I doing? Why did I do this? There's like a little debate going on there between, am I capable? This seems unreasonable. What the Course suggests is we don't engage in that circular pattern of debating with our sense of inadequacy, but rather that we question whether or not we belong in that dark cloud at all. For in other words, we question the foundation of the entire thought system of the ego, question whether or not this is who we truly are, whether or not this is a proper description of reality. And I submit that you can tell when you're in a dark cloud. We said that it's mistrustful, that it ranges from suspicious to vicious, that you feel inadequate, that it feels self-condemning. You know what those feelings are like, but you have to pay attention that that's what's going on, and then question whether or not that could be the Holy Spirit speaking to you. And immediately you'll have your answer. If you pay attention to how it feels, you'll know this cannot be the Holy Spirit. I must be listening to the ego. And you cannot possibly win in a debate with the ego. No one ever has won, because the ego will just wear you down and keep badgering you. Instead, what we need to do is shift away from that entire belief system, again, by questioning at its foundation. The ego has already questioned the ego's foundation and answered the fact that it has no reality. The Holy Spirit, did I say ego? I think I meant to say the Holy Spirit has already questioned the ego's foundation and already judged against the reality of the ego's thought system. So the judgment's already been made. You just have to remember that judgment when you get caught up in those clouds. And so it becomes a form of higher choice. I'm not going to battle against my own fears and try to duke it out in that environment. That is not where insight and truth and happiness comes from. Instead, I'm going to reject the entire foundation of that inadequacy and move to the Holy Spirit instead. Where we need to wrap up here.
Whenever you question your value, say, God himself is incomplete without me. Remember this when the ego speaks, and you will not hear it. The truth about you is so lofty that nothing unworthy of God is worthy of you. Choose then what you want in these terms, and accept nothing that you would not offer to God as wholly fitting for him. You do not want anything else. Return your part to him, and he will give you all of himself in exchange for the return of what belongs to him and renders him complete.
Mm-hmm. So the course is full of all these recommendations. When you find yourself in one of those dark clouds, what should you do? Here, and there's various word formulations. These are not magic potions. These are just ideas that can be expressed in a number of different ways. Here, the expression is to affirm your role in God's plan for salvation by affirming God himself is incomplete without me. I don't belong battling out with the ego regarding my worthiness, my sense of inadequacy. That's not where my mind belongs. And the intention of that is to trigger the remembrance so that you'll reorient towards the Holy Spirit's guidance in those moments. So it is a matter of choosing. Choose then what you want in these terms, and do not be willing to accept anything that would not be wholly fitting as God's gift to you. So it's a higher type of choosing. We read in the very first paragraph that God's plan for salvation was created for us. He wants us to be happy, but he gave us the ability to decide in any given moment whether or not we're on board with it. And so it is a matter of choosing what you want in these terms. So as a summary of these two different evaluations that are available, this is just a distillation of what was said already today. Let's remember that the Holy Spirit is forgiving and would discourage us from holding on to littleness and inadequacy. That she wants us to remember, to be reminded of our worth and our place in God's plan. Holy Spirit sees us in the highest light with perfect love and recognizes that we share in the divine nature. And so Holy Spirit evaluates us based on what has forever been true and can never change. And in order to help us heal, offers us a path to peace. The acceptance of this path is required for us to experience peace. It brings healing, it brings salvation, and it reminds us again that love is the foundation of reality. And I will post this on my website for those of you that would like to have your own copy. That's as far as we're going to go today. It turns out that our next session, which is the last section in this chapter, is complementary to what we read today. It builds upon and further expands upon these ideas of the two evaluations and goes deeper into the Holy Spirit's recommendation of how to establish a sense of adequacy and trustworthy in your own life. I hope that you can join us. Well, thank you all for your sharing today. It really adds so much to this time together. And David, thank you for your reading. Thank you all for your attention. Namaste.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Jonica, and everyone.
Everybody.
Namaste, everyone. Thanks, Jonica. Thanks, David.
Thank you so much.
Peace
Namaste.
and love.
Jonica, do you have a few moments now?
Sure. Hang on just a second, Noel.